Well, in the interest of full disclosure, Michael was on my board, as you know, and recently left, but the tragedy of choice here was that he was our cutest board member, although we do have a couple of competing new board members, Michael, I want to introduce you to. He's been really a terrific addition to my organization, which actually came out of the first Earth Day. But before we get started, one of the things you always have to know is your audience. So I brought some of Earth Day Network's t-shirts, so I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Michael already gave away the first one, which was the year that Earth Day started, but I'm wondering if anybody knows how many people allegedly came out on the streets for the first Earth Day in 1970, and also knows what our population might have been, and therefore why that number was so significant. Anybody know? Take a guess so I can give away a really great organic t-shirt.
4 million.
Come on. 20 million people came out on the streets for the first Earth Day, and our population was about 212 million, which means 10% of the people were literally walking around during that time. It was 1970, the Cuyahoga River had caught on fire and they couldn't put it out. Santa Barbara had a huge oil spill, not in relative terms compared to, say, some of the other more recent ones. It was a time of great unrest because of the Vietnam War. We had a senator from Wisconsin, Gaylord Nelson, and a very young guy, Dennis Hayes, and together they churned out, which is something that really has changed the world. So who got close? Because I need to give away these t-shirts. I'm not taking them back on the plane. You did?
But it's rigged. Give it to me and I'm going to,
give it to your
ball game.
Yeah, give it to your, oh, good, good, good. Actually, I'll give you them all and you can toss them. Here we go. There we go. Okay, next question. You guys are bad here, but at least I know my audience. Okay. So, what happened as a consequence of the first Earth Day? Who was the president? That one's easy. And what did he do? It's easy to say he, because we haven't had a woman president. What did he do as a result of the first Earth Day? He was the kind of guy who got scared quite easily. And anybody know what he did? Okay. Oh, she's on a... Isn't that called cheating? I'm not sure. Okay, give her a t-shirt. Hey, this is a business school. What do we expect out of you people? Can't expect honesty and forthrightness. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. All right, so he created the EPA, mostly because he was terrified of those large numbers, and he was the kind of guy that wanted to get reelected. And it was also the year a bunch of things happened. So the Clean Air Act, which existed, was completely reformulated. He created the mother of all environmental laws called the NEPA, which is our Environmental Policy Administrative Review. He also created clean air, clean water, dozens and dozens of laws that sort of came right out of the first Earth Day. And most of the environmental organizations that you know today, some existed prior, but most of them were focused on land conservation and species conservation. But for the first time, Earth Day was about something different. It was about people. It was about public health. It was about the children that were being born with deformities because we were dumping extraordinary toxics in our landfills and in our water systems. Okay, let's see, next question. Who can tell us when the first, what happened with the Environmental Protection Agency? What were the first sets of laws and regulations that they issued? Anybody know? No? Okay, I'm just going to have to give away all these t-shirts. Just start throwing them. This can be like a ball game. Every time I say something that's funny, you get to chuck one. Okay. Okay. Although most of what I have to say really isn't very funny. I'd also like to thank everybody for this event, Michael, of course, and your dean. But I'd also like to recommend to all of you to look out your windows. When I woke up this morning, I realized why I'm in this business, and looking out over that balcony is truly a remarkable experience, and it makes me feel that I'm doing the right thing. And I'd recommend you all take a picture of it, because it's a snapshot that will change over time, and you're extraordinarily lucky to be here and to see that, because the world is changing. 99% of the world does not look like what you have right here. It looks vastly different, and 99% of the world will never see it and will never enjoy the kind of comfort that you have and the experience that you're having. And so I just want to remind you that it is a complicated, really tough world out there. I've been in over 100 countries. We have an office in India, an extraordinary country with extraordinary problems. But coming here reminds me why I do my job. So I think just want to let you know you're all really lucky to be here, and invite me back anytime because I love that view. So as Michael said, you can toss a t-shirt. That was sort of funny. Okay. So I also want to give you 2 more seconds of my background. I have 4 brothers with MBAs. I owned a company and sold it and made a lot of money, or for me it was a lot of money. I have worked in a law firm. As Michael said, I developed an environmental crimes defense practice at Beveridge and Diamond in Washington with Williams and Connolly, 2 big firms. I've worked for Fortune 500 clients, so I really understand business. But it was as a result of that experience, I must admit, that I moved to the not-for-profit world. I had clients that did extraordinarily unimaginable, rotten things to their employees, but it was all within the confines and under the law, all perfectly legitimate responses to employee issues. I had companies that covered up their environmental crimes. I had companies that covered up extraordinary exposure to pesticides and toxics that their employees received inside their plants, and I defended them all very ably. I understand business, I understand what the landscape's like, and I know that it's changing. However, it was enough of an experience to move me in completely the opposite direction, and in fact, that's why Michael invited me here, which was to talk about the tragedy of choice, but from an environmental perspective. And the rest of the day, you're going to hear from 3 of the most enlightened companies in the country, and maybe the world. But my perspective is very different based on working with giant companies and knowing exactly what they're all about. And it's tough, it really is, and you all are headed into that field, but you're entering a different era. My children are behind you, they're 12 and 14, and they're coming up in the sort of next generation, and the world is significantly changing. I feel it every day. But it's not enough. We're in a world of 7 billion people and on our way to 8 in a very short period of time. We have extraordinary problems in the world. We have an enormous opportunity to turn things around and to create a green economy. But you're also dealing with hundreds of millions of companies who don't feel the same way that the 3 or 4 company heads in this room do feel, and that's their competition. What does Earth Day Network do? Our mission is to broaden, activate, and diversify the environmental movement worldwide, and to strengthen it and to educate them through our K-12 programs, obviously through Earth Day. We sometimes work on legislative issues. For example, I was one of the people who joined together with industry and wrote the legislation and helped get it passed to phase out the incandescent bulb. I see you have new lighting in here, and we're on our way. And to do that, we had to bring lots of people to the table. We brought the state of California, the state of Nevada, both of which had passed legislation that would have fast-forwarded the change in the lighting scheme. That made industry, Sylvania, GE, Philips very uncomfortable because they couldn't keep up. They had too many markets they were working in with too many laws, too many regulations, and so we all sat down at one table and over the course of a week wrote the legislation, wiped out California's law, wiped out Nevada's law, and created a federal legislative action passed by a very able member of Congress on the House side, introduced it in the Senate, and it became law, and we're all living with the consequences, including massive influx of Chinese products that have really changed the landscape in terms of lighting, but it's for a good cause. And I'd be happy to answer questions about that later because it is a kind of fascinating study of how you work with people to fast forward green economic issues. Earth Day Network is also probably the most and best known brand in the world in the environment. As Michael said, we're in 192 or 193 countries. We have about 27,000 groups in our network. We're a network by definition, and about 1 billion people each year participate in Earth Day, and that number is growing. Of course, it helps when the Chinese government and the Indian government have embraced it. That gives us big numbers, and a lot of publicity, but it is a growing movement, and it is a single, probably most effective way of introducing people into the environmental movement. Every K through 12 school in the country has some sort of Earth Day, and corporations, governments, everybody uses it for different reasons, which of course is the problem. Let me give you an idea. And let me start with two definitions. Michael read his. The goal of SEER is to help companies appreciate and adhere to a way of doing business that embraces environmental stewardship along with corporate citizenship, product and service quality, and financial strength. But I want to add a second definition to this, which is the definition of the slippery slope. A relatively small step that leads to a chain of events culminating in some significant effect, much like an object given a small push over the edge of a slope, sliding to the bottom. And of course, as you all know, that definition is at much a part of what companies and not-for-profits face every day. What small steps do we take in the wrong direction that lead us to a point of no return? Assume that Earth Day Network's core business function is environmental stewardship, and that financial stability is essential as we are our product and service quality, which are our programs and campaigns, to reach their intended audience. They have to meet all these goals and objectives. We have to evaluate them for success. We have to be honest about the outcomes and our impact. How does a global NGO like ours, responsible for the biggest and most famous brand in the environmental world, stay true to its mission, which again is to broaden, activate, and diversify the movement when we have 7 billion people and counting, and we can only meet some of those needs, very few of those needs, and to what end? And how do we fund it in a world of increasing competition from other organizations, and with global threatening environmental events that have the unfortunate consequences of making Earth Day, a day or a month or a season, look slightly immaterial when you look in relation to declining fresh water, climate change, overpopulation. How do we fund that, keep it true to its course, and make people understand that what we do is essential to moving everything along, including environmental stewardship inside companies? First, I think you have to understand sort of the range of opinions about what Earth Day is supposed to be about. For deep green people, Earth Day should be about passion, demonstrations, living up to its 1970 reputation as a game changer. And that most individuals and foundations who fund us, or who we'd like to fund us because it's the easiest money to keep and give and spend, they totally agree with that assessment, and consequently, they rarely fund Earth Day. They view it as a yearly occurrence. They don't see it as a game changer, and so we have to look elsewhere. In addition to the deep greens in the world, we have middle to light greens. For them, Earth Day is about massive service objectives, people trying to use that day to motivate people to internalize environmental qualities and ethics. They do cleanups, and that is sort of the basis and the majority of the billion people who participate in Earth Day. Then we have the light greens, the light greens, who are children, schools, who view Earth Day as a teaching moment. We have governments who showcase their accomplishments, plan for the future, and we have corporations who want to tell us about their sustainability. They sometimes want to greenwash, and they want to showcase, again, what they're planning on doing, what their products, what they're doing, what their commitment is to the environment generally, and to their employees. And we service them all. It's a big world out there. So how do we build our brand, stay true to it, to our mission, raise money, and then use the money to further and create an environmental movement that's extremely active? And we're headed towards deep green, not light green. We're headed towards very deep green. So we have to go back to the definition of slippery slope and talk about what happens to me every day at Earth Day Network and with the other staff that work there. How do we raise money from corporations? And let me say, although this is kind of a challenge, but it's, in my view, it's absolutely true, and I've worked on really all sides of the equation. With only the very rarest of exceptions, is there such a thing as a green company? And I honestly believe, not just because they're here, but I honestly believe the companies that are in this room actually represent the rarest of the rare. And as I said, there are hundreds of millions of companies. I work in China and India, and I can tell you flat out every single day, sustainability has nothing to do with their equation. If they run into it, if they run out of water, if they have energy issues, yeah, maybe, but it's not the driving force. It's not the driving force almost anywhere in the world. Maybe Western Europe, maybe Japan, a few other places, but again, You're looking at a handful of companies that are doing the right thing, and the rest of them simply are not. And if they try to approximate it, it's for reasons other than environmental protection or for protecting future generations. So what am I supposed to do? Can any of you imagine an Exxon Earth Day? Can you imagine the Washington Mall? This is the way it looks. We have 250,000, 300,000 people. Sometimes we've had 500,000 people. The backdrops to the US Capitol. It says Earth Day Network across the top, and on each side of the stage is a giant Exxon logo. Does anybody agree that that would be a good thing for me, or for the dark greens or the light greens? And what does it say? So how do I do this? What companies do I work with? I'll give you an example of a company I haven't worked with, but has joined in the environmental movement, not just overnight. It's a good company, but woke up seemingly yesterday and decided that it couldn't possibly make its jeans anymore out of pure cotton because it's too water intensive, and everywhere their plants are, they're running out of water. So Levi's came out with a big statement about how they're going to jump into this whole water issue because our fresh water is dwindling everywhere, and because they, along with many other companies, have been accused over and over again of depleting non-rechargeable aquifers to create their wonderful product. Do I work with them? And if so, how do I explain that to the general public? And at what instance do I have to walk away? And how do I use their money? I'll give you an example of something that happened to us 2 years ago during the 40th anniversary of Earth Day, which was really big everywhere. A company that is very famous in the chemical lawn business had a wholly owned subsidiary that was Organic Green Lawn Company. And the Organic Green Lawn Company gave us a very small amount of money and then put out a press release. It took the anti-pesticide groups, it was ChemLawn, otherwise known as True Green now, and then they have an organic division. It took the pesticide and water groups maybe 24 hours to plan and execute a massive campaign against us. We had to return the money, apologize to the company, and move on. But that's the kind of thing that can happen to us on a regular basis if we get in bed with a company that doesn't, as its really core mission, have all of these principles incorporated into their day-to-day business. Let's take Walmart as an example. Two of the major people that are involved with sustainability of that company are either one's a close friend and one is somebody I've known a long time. A couple of days ago, they came out with a white paper, I think, on agriculture and their sourcing of their products. But how do we, as an organization that promotes true sustainability and survival of the species, take money from a company who at its core is rotten? And the reason they're rotten is because they are after one thing: sell as much stuff as you can at the cheapest price, no matter what the cost to society. That's been their mission since they've begun. They're the largest company in the world, are they not? I think they have the largest number of employees. And while these friends of mine are in the sustainability field inside Walmart, their core mission is antithetical to everything Earth Day stands for. And if you can imagine, I don't know how many of you have children, but my daughter can walk into Walmart and leave with $10 and leave with 5 shirts, each of them 100% cotton, each of them having an extraordinary impact on the earth. And if that's the business model for that particular company, then that makes them an unsuitable partner for Earth Day, at least with respect to Earth Day. Now, I can work with them on a variety of other things, but I can't work with them on Earth Day because, again, I service everybody: governments, children, deep greens. So it's a very complicated issue that we face every day. It's kind of the opposite issue of what the green companies in this room stand for. They have to look at it from a different perspective. But our core mission is to protect the environment, to save the earth, and save it from ourselves. So that's really sort of the issue I present in front of you. And I don't know if I'm supposed to ask for questions now or we're doing it later, but it's not all that hopeful, and I'm sorry about that. But we are increasingly finding companies with extraordinary conscience. And those are the companies we look to and hope to work with in the future. Thank you all very much.
So we have 5 or 10 minutes for questions for Kathleen, please.
Yep.
Hi, my name's Bobby Bunchy, and I appreciate what you said. Thanks for coming to talk to us today. I just thought that, you mentioned Walmart. I know that they really improved their supply chain management, and that's one way to help the environment.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly, because again, I have two good friends that work there in the sustainability field, think what they're doing is phenomenal. And I think that, on the one hand, is not the issue for me. In my slippery slope world, it's not whether the company's doing better and better each year to improve their environmental record. It's whether, in essence, do they represent a value that is synonymous with Earth Day. So in the case of Walmart, and it's true with many other companies, not just Walmart, at the core of that business is to sell as much as they can at the cheapest price to as many people as they can. So that value doesn't mean the company's bad, but the value, the core value, is antithetical to what our principles are, which is we need to live in a sustainable world with a population that's out of control, with massive freshwater problems, migrating people, and climate change. So how can we value and work with a company around Earth Day, around that concept, when generally the broad world would find that sort of antithetical to the brand of Earth Day? So my job, I'm just the caretaker of Earth Day. For as long as I'm there, Earth Day will go on for the next thousands and thousands of years, because it just sort of, call it primordial, call it the spring, call it whatever. Earth Day's really become sort of integrated into everybody's thinking, at least in the United States, and it's growing abroad. So my job is just to protect the brand, and that's what we're here talking about. So again, it's not that Walmart's a bad company. It's not that they're headed in the direction that we all appreciate. It's really, can I work with them and connect them to the brand of Earth Day? And I think the majority of people, if you were in the same boat I am, let's assume you're all helping me protect the brand. The brand is the cleanest, purest environmental brand in the world. And that's my job, is to protect it. Who do I work with? How do I accept the money? And how do I convey to the public that I'm proud to be working with them because of their movement up from the slippery slope, as opposed to what their core mission is. So it's an ambivalence that I face every day, because I like the company, I like the people, but I don't like their values. Yep.
Have you had any success in, you feel, with companies that you've worked with in conveying that to the public? In other words, with Walmart, for instance, they've obviously done a bunch of great stuff, as she said, with supply chain management and just really dialing in their product. Have you had any, what you feel are successes in relating that to the public?
You know, it's, in a way, I'll answer it two ways. It's not my job, essentially, to convey to the public a particular corporate ethic or brand, although we work with companies all the time that we're incredibly proud to work with. I mean, the current, I guess he's the vice president of Patagonia, is on my board. Michael was with Patagonia. That's a company that stands out worldwide for its ethic, its products, everything about it. But it sits at the pinnacle. So even to the extent I work with Patagonia or any company that happens to be in that rarefied world, my job is really to talk about how we're working together and how something about what they're doing, maybe not their products. We don't ever endorse products or work around products, but we work with companies to promote their values. And then I'll give you a good example. The one time when it was really easy for us to do it was with the lighting legislation. And believe it or not, lighting is a gigantic part of climate issues and CO2 and energy use, wasted energy use. A regular incandescent bulb, and I know more than you'd ever want to know about light bulbs, spends most of its life, 90% of its life, making heat, right? So in fact, when you're switching out the bulbs, we've had to have all these conversations about senior citizens who turn on the lights in their house and don't realize that not just making them feel better, but actually warms up their house. It's a huge heat loss. But sitting down with all those companies with really varied interests from different countries, Philips is from a different country than Sylvania, which is part of Siemens and GE, was an incredible experience. They all had to give a lot, and it was really tough. We did it in less than a week, but they had to give up so much in order to work with the environmental community. We had to get 2 states to cave on really strong environmental laws. And in that case, it was the ethic inside those companies and the need for business certainty, right? They wanted certainty in the marketplace. So we all sat down and we had to negotiate it. But I did see inside their business leadership, not their CSR people, their business leadership, that they were willing to make those compromises with us in order to have certainty in the marketplace and to look like good guys. And also to protect themselves against other companies which were about to dump their products on the United States. And it worked out in that particular case. So yes, then you can talk about the business ethics of a company for sure. And it's very comfortable to do it because you've seen that compromise and you've seen it around something that's critically important. But if you're working generally with them in terms of sponsorship, so Walmart might want to sponsor one of our programs, it's really difficult for us to do that. And no matter how much we like the company, we really can't connect it to Earth Day and its mission.
Thank you. That's all.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you very much.